Hello my lovely friends, and welcome to this second Project Ash vlog. Today is all about research. Now I will admit that I had not planned to film this vlog in the way that I did. As you can see, I'm actually outside of my house for once. I ended up having a spontaneous meetup with my friend to go see the new How to Train Your Dragon movie, and I decided I would take a couple of my research books and head to the library after the film to read and take some notes. However, this wasn't really planned, so I didn't film an intro or anything, so here I am waiting to meet my friend at a cafe at the cinema before going to watch the movie. Research is such a vital part of writing a novel, but it's also the part that is often kind of underrated when it comes to novels that aren't historical fiction. When you write a historical novel, it is expected that you do research into the time, into the world, so that you can portray it accurately. Authors like Philippa Gregory and Alison Weir and Hilary Mantel all have studied the time periods in which they write in. From the way in which the country was ruled politically, to the food people ate, what they wore, and so on, writers of historical fiction really put in a lot of effort behind the scenes to ensure that their novels are as realistic for the time as they can be. However, I'm not writing a historical fiction novel. Project Ash is a fantasy novel, and therefore the research it takes on is in a different form. You might even be wondering, why research at all? Fantasy novels are all about your imagination brought to life. You can kind of do anything and everything with them. You can make dragons speak Swedish or have talking potatoes. You're free to do whatever you like with the world that you've created. However, even fantasy can have roots within reality. This is something that we might talk a bit more on when we discuss world building. It's all well and good having the freedom to create your own political system, but you still kind of have to have a rough idea of what a political system is and how it works to be able to create one. Or if you're writing a sci-fi novel, you might want to just refresh your memory and understanding of how space works. It doesn't even have to be anything that grand or academic about it either. You've really been researching without even realising it. Reading novels within the same genre or about similar topics is also a form of research. From reading another's work, you can see the bits that you liked and the parts that you didn't. This is also research. One aspect is kind of market researching, seeing what books are available and what people are reading. This might help you later with marketing your book to agents or to readers. And it also, in another way, it will help you work out what makes your book different. You might find a book that has a similar storyline to yours, but the characters are completely different, or perhaps it's the other way around. And this can help you with kind of fine-tuning your own project and making it stand out from the rest. For me, however, the research takes the form of fairy tales. I mentioned in the first Project Ash vlog that my novel is heavily influenced by fairy tales. It's not quite a retelling, but there are many stories and characters that feature or influence the story in some way. I also mentioned in my last vlog that Project Ash is actually the second book in a series, and whilst I did a lot of research when I was starting writing the first book, Project Red, I thought it would be a good idea to refresh my memory and maybe find some new tales to take inspiration from. I really did a deep dive into fairy tales the first time around. I even did an online course into fairy tale studies, which was fantastic. It was free, and if I can find it, or if it still exists, I will link it below for you. I took a lot of notes on that, which I kept in this notebook, and I'm now kind of just reading over. I've always loved fairy tales. Ever since I was young, I just enjoyed them. But as an adult, I find them really interesting. There's a structure to a lot of the tales. but then some are just so random and magical. Some of them hold moral teachings, and a lot of them don't, or the meaning has been lost. For English fairy tales, there are a lot that kind of link back to their King Arthur tales. Tom Thumb was meant to be a knight in Arthur's court in some tales, and Jack the Giant Killer was also rewarded by the king in others. It also amazes me how certain stories, like the Cinderella type story for example, have existed in different countries and cultures for hundreds of years before these countries communicated with each other. Perhaps it's true what they say about great minds thinking alike, or perhaps there's something so inherent about these stories that across the world people have spoken and developed them. It's like how so many cultures have stories relating to witches. If you're interested in different types of witch folklore, kind of from across the world, then I highly recommend the book that I'm studying in this video, the Vargo Book of Witches. It's so good, and I found the introduction fascinating to read. Perhaps because I'm born on Halloween, but I've always taken an interest in witches. From reading The Worst Witch to Harry Potter to Hocus Pocus to the discovery of witches, witch-related media has kind of followed me throughout life, so perhaps it's only natural that I would want to add something to that myself. However, whilst nowadays the kind of idea of a witch is cool and there's also an aesthetic choice for it, throughout history to be a witch and to be accused of being a witch is this punishment and something to be really genuinely feared. And this is another area that I'm sort of researching in, be it lightly, and it's both fascinating and just genuinely horrifying. Even in these fairy tales, the evil witch is drowned and burned at the end, and it's just a kind of reflection of the real life into these stories, and it's just kind of eerie in that way. I don't know, maybe I'm giving too much away here or just talking about things you might find boring, but I just find this stuff genuinely fascinating and just wanted to talk a little bit about it. It's kind of hard at the moment because I'm still, what can I say? I'm still waiting for some stuff relating to Project Red as that's doing its rounds. So I don't want to give too much away about Project Ash yet, so I'm sort of being a bit careful with what I say, but there's also bits here like that I can talk about, and I love to geek out about my novels, so here we are, we're talking about fairy tales whether you want to hear it or not. Anyway, I really enjoyed this research session. More so than I thought I would. I'll talk about it a little bit more later, but I sometimes struggle with days when I'm not actually writing. However, this session was great for sparking new ideas. Because I'm still working on some edits for Project Red, I feel like I've been a little stuck when it comes to starting Project Ash. I've started bits of a draft and then stopped. It's kind of good to be able to have some time just dedicated to this novel and to building ideas. No pressure to put words onto page or anything like that, just purely writing out ideas. Apologies for the lighting. It's really quite awful. I can't seem to get a good light at all, really. So we're just gonna have to make do with this. So yeah, I'm back home. Obviously, that was actually a really good and productive research session. It was just like, it's one of those things when it comes to research where I sometimes kind of, not necessarily put it off, but I often feel like it's just, it doesn't feel like I'm being productive enough. It's perhaps that imposter syndrome sort of thing, because I work for myself, because, you know, I spend my days writing. I feel like I need to be doing more, and, you know, there needs to be loads of words on the page to make it feel like I'm properly working or whatever. And days where it's about research and stuff like that, it doesn't feel like I'm working. I don't know, that sounds a bit ridiculous, because when you're at uni, for example, and you're doing academic essays, you've got to first do the research so that you can write your essay. And it's the same thing for this. You've got to first do your research so then you can write your novel, and it's the same thing, it's the same process. And yeah, I feel like today it actually went really well. I was able just to sort of sit through and read through 2 of these books that I've had on my shelf for a while, and so I have read them through before I started writing the first book, but it's good to have a refresh and remind myself, why did I tag this page? What was it about this sentence or thing that made me go, oh, I can use this? And, you know, have I already used it or have I not? And so yeah, it was a really good research session. Also, the movie was fantastic. Honestly, it was really just a case of seeing like the animation come to life. It was just like one of the best live adaptation sort of animated movies that I've seen for a while. Actually, it was just so good, and I'd love to find a way to call it research. I can only say that there are dragons in my novel, so maybe there'll be more dragons thanks to that film. You know, I'm sure we can count it and class it as research there. Anyway, I'm going to sort of just spend some time now going through my notebook and the notes that I was making whilst I was at the library, and then just going to type them up onto my Notion page, so then I can have them a bit more, like I can move them around and sort of play with them a bit more, maybe expand on some bits, and then just maybe do a bit more reading and researching later. And good tea.